Hi, I want to talk about one key area of my research, which is banking. In particular, I want to talk about my research in the area of public sector banks. The reason this research makes an important contribution is that most of the high quality research in finance and in business is published in the US, in the US based journals. And as many of you would know, the US does not have a single government owned bank. Therefore, there's very little research looking at government owned banks that's published in the top journals in the world. Yet, if you look across the world, 70% of countries, especially, for instance, the BRIC countries, a lot of the emerging economies, China, South Africa, India, Indonesia, etc., have banks that are government owned. And there are a significant set of costs and benefits that come when the government owns a bank. In particular, a benefit is that the bank could be used for advancing some of the social goals like credit to weaker sections of society, etc. But there is an attendant set of costs, an important set of costs that comes from the way these banks are governed, especially because you have politicians and bureaucrats coming into the mix whenever you have a government running a commercial enterprise. To give you an idea of the problem that this creates, imagine the situation where, let's say, you were born with a silver spoon. You had a rich uncle who was willing to bankroll all your fun, versus another kid, let's say, who does not have that luxury. The kid that does not have that luxury will of course be very careful about the decisions he makes, about the way he or she spends money. In contrast, this kid that is born with a silver spoon may be a lot more indiscriminate in the way he makes his decisions or her decisions and spends money. And of course, what you'll have is this kid will never run out of money, will never go bankrupt. That's a benefit which a lot of people see. But what you don't see is that altering in the decision making that happens because he or she has a rich uncle to essentially bankroll that fund. Who is that rich uncle in the context of public sector banks? It is you and me. The money that we pay as taxes, the taxpayer is basically that rich uncle that is continually bankrolling the indiscretion and the lack of good judgment in the case of public sector banks. Just to give you a sense, in just the last 3-4 years, 70,000 crores has been invested in recapitalizing these banks. Just imagine if that 70,000 crores had been invested in primary education for poor kids, or for healthcare, investing in government hospitals, the benefit that it would have generated. Instead, you have 70,000 crores, a good part of which is going to land in the hands of crony promoters, which basically does not serve the poor for sure. So the cost that comes here is the fact that you have a taxpayer who is willing to always write off the debts of the public sector banks. Now, just to get a little bit more specific, you have politicians and and bureaucrats who do not have the expertise in banking. But they are the ones that are appointing the people on the banks. They are the ones that are choosing the board members. It is like you have someone like N. Srinivasan being this chairman of the cricket selection committee. Imagine who will be playing in the Indian cricket team. Sharad Pawar, Thakur, Anurag Thakur, etc. They'll be representing India in the test matches, and you can imagine what the outcome would be, which is what you actually see in the case of the of the public sector banks. So the key solution that the PJ Naik committee report, which is the highlight of the research that I've talked about, this report, I was the member and the director of research of this report. So this report highlights these problems and then suggests solutions. What is the solution? The solution is to create a Chinese wall that separates the politicians and the bureaucrats on the one hand and the banks on the other hand. And that is through the creation of a bank holding company. It is important here to create a bank holding company that is comprised of senior professionals from the banking sector, people of unimpeachable integrity and of incorruptible values and of professional repute, so that they govern the banks in a commercial manner, in a manner that actually befits these commercial banks, so that they can compete well with the private sector banks. Because the bottom line is that our government systematically undermines the very banks that it owns through these governance problems. So the key solution here is to actually bring them on an equal footing with the private sector banks by implementing these governance problems. Thank you.